The first 5 minutes tell you a lot about a football game. First of all, it tells you the tone that'll be set during the game, how teams are coming about in a physical nature, who is mentally prepared. But it also allows me to see, in my mind, what teams are ready for the unexpected.
The matchups, Mr. Rivers, in this LSU-Alabama game, they're always incredible. This year will be no different. Think about the Alabama front seven run defense against Leonard Fournette. Think about Derrick Henry, the collisions he'll have with guys like Kendall Beckwith. Think about that LSU receiving core finally maybe hitting its stride as a collective against the likes of Marlon Humphrey and Cyrus Jones, Mika Fitzpatrick. This is a game that I think if you dropped other teams into this environment, into this moment, against the effort that you'll get from the other side, they would wilt. There are a lot of top 10 programs that would wilt in the kind of game that this is.
Talking about the deep end, I think the officials have made everybody go off the deep end in college football this year. So the last thing I'll definitely be watching for will be the officiating in the fourth quarter of some of these big games this weekend. Because a lot of officials, and you know it, have the propensity to put more weight on the fourth quarter than they do in the first quarter. And they have this swallow the whistle mentality, and we don't want to be the individuals who decide the outcome. Well, I'm 33 years old, been watching football for 34 years.
Yeah, you're old.
All right? I understand that if a flag is thrown, most of the time it's because an infraction was committed.
The water's about to get too deep for some of these so-called contenders this weekend. You've been to a community pool before. You know how all the kids can hang out in the shallow end. Everybody can swim in the shallow end, because if you can't, you can still stand up and the water is no deeper than waist high. But once you get to November, if you're still in the playoff conversation, that means that you have extended yourself out into the deep end. There is no more ground to stand on. You better be able to swim. That means you better have enough depth. That means you better be able to handle the pressure. That means you better be ready to play your best football at the most important time. That's the money month. It's November. Matt, throw that graphic we have up. There are a number of games this weekend where you have teams that are still supposed contenders. Look at these lines. Iowa, supposedly, once again, a top 10 team. Touchdown favorite on the road at Indiana. Utah is not even a favorite for a second straight road game at Washington. But TCU, all-powerful TCU, under a touchdown favorite at Oklahoma State. Game of the year in the SEC this weekend, LSU at Alabama. Plenty of ways to look at this one. How do you see it?
I think Alabama's offense is the difference in this game, and the Tide wins 35-17 or something like that, because I think that they're going to have a hard time stopping Derrick Henry. They're going to have a hard time stopping the skill position players at receiver that Alabama has. They're going to have a hard time stopping the passing game with Jacob Coker. And you throw in the fact that this game is in Tuscaloosa, and I think that the Alabama offense is the difference in this ball game, because LSU's defense is not normally LSU. You look at the games they've played, the teams they've played this year, there's been no indication that the LSU defense is up to their normal standards under Kevin Steele. I said that at the preseason. I thought that they weren't up to their normal level. I believe that now, and I believe it's going to show Saturday night in Tuscaloosa against the Tide.
Number 2, number 4, respectively, in that first playoff committee ranking we saw unveiled last night. I loved it. Many other people hated it for obvious reasons. What was your impression from what you saw?
I thought Clemson deserved to be number 1. I thought that Clemson, when you look at their schedule, even a game against Appalachian State early in the season, Appalachian State hadn't lost since then. They haven't had a bad game on offense since then. I thought that Clemson's a team that has passed every single test. As far as 2 SEC teams go, Alabama, I don't see how you can look at their body of work, looking at the Ole Miss game, how they lost and who all they've beaten, including a 28-point win at Georgia, an 18-point win at Texas A&M, and say they're not one of the top 4 teams in the country. So I was totally fine with it, thought they did a good job, and we'll see what happens.
It's all easy to speculate over, but I've always maintained it's going to be very hard to actually pull that trigger. When it comes time, though, do you actually think Georgia is going to make a head coaching move during or at the end of this season?
Well, you have to weigh the pros and cons if you're the University of Georgia. Here's the thing. Number 1 is, do you want to disrupt the recruiting class? We felt at the beginning of the year, or I did, that Georgia was a year away. We felt their defense was not up to the standards. They had a bad hire in Todd Grantham. Let's just call it what it was. He recruited a lot of guys for his quote-unquote system, but they're not normal Georgia defensive guys. Georgia's got defensive line talent coming in. They have quarterback talent coming in. It's set up for the Dogs to make a run. I've said that time and time again. This team was not supposed to be this good. So do you want to disrupt all that and start over and possibly forfeit a chance at winning a national championship if you fire Mark Richt? I think a lot of people got on the bandwagon, and now they're a little butthurt because Georgia's not as good as they thought they were.
Yeah, I can't believe it's not butthurt just flying off of grocery store shelves all over the place down here. One job that has been open, though, for already a few weeks now, South Carolina. What's the latest there? You're really close to that.
Well, I think that South Carolina right now, the #1 target is Houston head coach Tom Herman. Ray Tanner, the athletic director at South Carolina, has had his eye on Tom Herman even before he even became athletic director at South Carolina, when Herman was in his early stages of offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I think Tom Herman will be the best hire South Carolina could make. If he turns the job down or maybe goes elsewhere, I think that possibly Kirby Smart from Alabama is the solid #2. After that, it's kind of the field. People were talking about Justin Fuente from Memphis. I don't think he's going to be a fit at South Carolina. I think he's more of a fit at a place like Virginia Tech. So it could actually be anybody once it gets past those two. But I think from what I've heard, that Tom Herman is a strong possibility to end up at South Carolina.
Arkansas, still think the upset is a distinct possibility in Oxford. I'll take Arkansas with a 2 confidence level. Could not be more confident in the Clemson Tigers dump trucking Florida State.
12-point spread, they beat Florida State. I don't care if it's by 1 or 30, they get it done. And TCU, Oklahoma State, I still like the Horned Frogs at a 2. That'll probably be the game I don't mess with at all, because I really don't have an indication on who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, no one does. If they tell you they do, they're lying. Okay.